So everyone, it's answers time. Back for 1967. Let's see how you've done. Okay, the biggest selling single of the year in the UK. Now, you may well remember this, of course, it was a travesty. That Please Release Me by Engelbert Humperdinck was the biggest selling single of the year in the UK. Not only that, it kept Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields Forever off #1. And that was the first time the Beatles have released a single that did not get to #1 since Love Me Do, right back at the beginning of their career. Or please me if you believe the chart that had it only at #2. But whichever one, that was the first time. Many would say their greatest single ever didn't get there, but instead Jerry Dorsey got there first. Yes, Engelbert Humperdinck's real name was Jerry Dorsey. Tom Jones, in his autobiography, tells a story about how he's not a fan, I don't think, of Engelbert Humperdinck. He knew him very well as Jerry, and when you spoke to him and called him Jerry, he wouldn't answer. He wouldn't answer. Wasn't a fan of his, certainly, there's no doubt, if you read that book. The biggest selling album of the year, yes, it was Sgt. Pepper's. The other three were huge sellers, including Valdunica and Rocks, but gently. Not one I know very well, I have to say. The Monkees had, oh, goodness knows how many albums out this year. Was it 4? Monkees, more of the Monkees. I think the Monkees actually came out the previous year at the end of '66, but was still in the chart and still selling big time. I think more of the Monkees came out in '67. Headquarters came out in '67. As we'll see later on, Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn and Jones Limited as well. They were really going at it, weren't they? Okay, #3, it was the Beach Boys who did not perform. They were down to, and in fact, they were originally part of the organisation of the whole thing, but apparently didn't take part, partially because Carl Wilson was having some problems with the draft board, who were claiming he needed to go off to Vietnam, and he was saying he didn't. Brian Wilson, as usual, was half unwilling, half incapable of performing. I think particularly he felt that people wanted a very different type of band to the Beach Boys at this event. Otis Redding, of course, and this was his big breakthrough. I mean, he'd been known before this to black audiences hugely, but this was his big breakthrough. He had an incredible performance. If you see the film of the festival, he steals the show. And of course, sadly for him, then only a few weeks later, he was to die tragically. So he never really got to enjoy that. The magazine that was published in 18th of October was Rolling Stone, with John Lennon in his outfit for How I Won the War on the cover as well, and a feature on the Monterey Pop Festival. The UK's contribution to the One World, I'm sure many of you have seen it, was the Beatles recording All You Need Is Love. It was them literally performing in the studio with loads and loads of people, Mick Jagger and everybody else around, and flowers everywhere and whatever. I'm sure you remember having seen it. Lyrics. Okay, so the Electric Banana was, of course, Mellow Yellow by Donovan from his album Mellow Yellow, one of his 2 from that year. The Electric Banana, apparently part of his lyric finding, he used to mess around with John Lennon with lyrics quite a lot, but the Electric Banana was apparently a name for a vibrator. Well, there you are. Terry and Julie were in Waterloo Sunset from the Kinks. The famous story is that it's Terence Stamp and Julie Christie, the 2 big, British stars of the time in with the zeitgeist. But Ray Davies has always said, no, it wasn't. It was just Terry and Julie. It's just the 2 names that he picked up. Cracking album of theirs from this year, of course, Something Else by the Kinks. With that, concluding it, the beautiful Waterloo Sunset. She said, there is no reason, the truth is plain to see, but I wandered through my playing cards and would let her be. Part of the bonkers lyrics, of course, of A Whiter Shade of Pale from Procol Harum. Lyrics that they have since admitted basically are a load of nonsense, although some say it's an abstract version of A Night Out, don't they? Whiter Shade of Pale, of course, one of more than one pop hit that's based on Bach's Air on a G-string, or Air from his Orchestral Suite No. 3, often known as Air on a G-string, which was famously, of course, used for Hamlet cigars, those of us who remember when they used to advertise those. The Gown That Touches the Ground was Pink Floyd. It's a Procol Harum again, mistype. See Emily Play by Pink Floyd from their first album, and their only album, with Syd Barrett, of course, at the helm. Piper at the Gate of Dawn. I feel kind of blow my mind is Itchy Park from The Small Faces. Huge hit. Certainly, they were bunking off school. That's what it was about, apparently. It's about Little Ilford Park over in Essex, which had that as a nickname, Itchy Park. Obviously not a particularly nice place. Itchy was the slang they used for stinging nettles. There we are. So obviously not the nice. If the park's named after stinging nettles, can't be the nicest place to go. But yeah, it was about bunking off school and not apparently about necessarily taking drugs, as many think it was. There we are. Incidentally, by the way, for See Emily Play, I forgot to mention, Syd Barrett always claimed that Emily was a girl that he saw when he woke up one night after sleeping in the woods. No idea. Well, and he clearly doesn't have any idea whether that was a real thing or not. Never mind. Right, name that album. Look, you're here. Where are you? You're Between the Buttons. The better of the two Rolling Stones album of the year, in my opinion, there. Then, see, Surrealistic Pillow, because there's your surrealist sculpture. A lobster on a telephone, famous Salvador Dali poster, one that's in the Tate. And a little girl hugging a pillow. It's a surrealistic pillow. Jefferson Airplane's classic album of that year. Look, number 13, what is it? It's a girl. What kind of girl? It's a Chelsea girl. Yes, you see, Nico, Chelsea girl. I gather Nico wasn't too chuffed for that album. The production of the album, she sang it and then she wanted it a bit more rocky, I gather, and came back and said they put all these flutes over it. What's going wrong? Number 14 is the aforementioned Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn and Jones Limited. I know I didn't put the limited on, and don't worry if you didn't. From remembering it, that's fine. There you go, your Pisces, Aquarius and Capricorn signs, and good old Tom at the same time there. Apparently the Jones bit was there because Jones was also a Capricorn. So there were two Capricorns in there. Then number 15 is Disraeli Gears. Cream's best album. The bizarre name? Well, apparently it's a malapropism. One of their roadies joined in a conversation they were having about bikes and racing bikes, was referring to, oh God, here comes my French, derailleur gears, something like that. Got it wrong, called them Disraeli gears. They fed about laughing and decided they had to use it. Okay, hope you're doing all right so far. Here comes the connections round. It's a sad connection between all four of these. All four of them died in 1967, and all four of them died pretty young. Brian Epstein overdosed at 32. There's always rumours he killed himself, but most stories seem to suggest it was an overdose, that he took a second or third or even fourth load of pills. Apparently he had a bit of a habit of doing this. Joe Meek was 37. Just think how much more of a career he had. First real, certainly in Britain, first real producer to be thought of as an artist, wasn't he? Has a very interesting film about him from a few years back called Telstar, worth looking at, which kind of just shows his idiosyncratic ways. Very sadly, of course, he obviously had some mental illness at the time and ended up shooting his landlady and then shooting himself afterwards. Yes, the aforementioned Otis Redding, died at the age of 26. That was all in that tragic plane crash. And again, just weeks after becoming, hitting the big time, really. And John Coltrane was 40 when he died of liver cancer. But almost certainly brought on by his addictions. Okay, number 17. The connection, of course, is that Ed Sullivan told both, or got somebody to tell both of these groups to change their lyrics for performance. The Stones were told that Let's Spend the Night Together needed to be Let's Spend Some Time Together. And the Doors were told that Girl, We Couldn't Get Much Higher in Light My Fire should be Girl, It Couldn't Get Much Better, I think was what they were told. So what was the difference between the two? The difference, for your bonus mark, was that the Stones did what he asked and the Doors didn't. Now, if you've seen the, how do I put it, controversial, laughable Doors film that by Oliver Stone with Val Kilmer in, you will have seen this happen, and you'll see that he leans into the camera and goes higher very loudly as if I'm making a point. Watch the clip, he doesn't. And still to this day, many, the rest of the band for many years afterwards claimed that it was purely that he forgot. He was nervous and he forgot. But there we are. The legend is better than the truth, as so often is the case. What's the connection between Bowie, Floyd, The Doors and Scott Walker? Debut albums in '67. 4 legends who released their first ever album. Bowie's obviously the least successful of the 4. Scott Walker's wasn't massively successful. That was a wonderful album, probably my favourite of the 4. Actually, they're up there. Actually, no, it's not. Of course, The Doors is my favourite. I do like The Doors. I know a lot of people don't, and their debut album's one of the great debut albums of all time, isn't it? Okay, then number 19. What's the connection between all of these? Now, as I said at the time, you either got it or you punch yourself in the face for not getting it. They were all on the cover of Sgt. Pepper. There you are. You can see them all. Have some fun trying to find them in there. Lots of stories with the Sgt. Pepper album. I could be here all night telling you about them. I mean, whole documentaries made about that cover, haven't there? From John Lennon's, some would say playful, some would say deliberately obstructive desires to push the boat out, wanting to have Hitler, Christ, and Gandhi on there. None of whom, of course, made it. Gandhi, they particularly felt that they'd never sell any in India if they put him on there. There are pictures that you can find of Hitler being removed at the last minute. Goodness me, imagine if he had been on there. He was never going to get away with Christ, was he? The reaction, of course, of the different people on there was very different. Mae West, you got there at the front, the bottom right, said, actually, no, you haven't. Sorry, it's Diana Dawes, isn't it? Anyway, Mae West said, what would I be doing in a Lonely Hearts Club band? And didn't want to do it. Didn't want to sign a name over. But eventually they got around it. Shirley Temple wanted to hear the album before she agreed to being on there. Another character on there, I can't remember his name now, who quite obscure one, who demanded $300 for appearing on it, of course, said no. Life wasn't him really in the end, wasn't it? Okay, the picture round. Number 20 is Nancy Sinatra, whose album Boots, probably her greatest album there, came out this year. She was a real swinging figure. 21 is The Seekers, slightly less swinging, but of course had that massive hit with The Carnival Is Over. The Year Come the Day is their album from the time being, from there. 22 is Eric Burdon. This was the year in which the Animals became Eric Burdon and the Animals. And then they released Winds of Change. Now, if you've not heard Winds of Change, just go and listen to it. It's not what you expect. I love it. I think it's great, but it's mad. It is totally and utterly insane. Cracking version of Paint It Black on there. 23, jazzman Herb Alpert, who was having hits all over the place at the time, this and the previous year. There's his album of 67. 24 is Donovan. We've already had him come up once. There's his other album, Sunshine Superman, released in the US in 66 and not till 67 in the UK, strangely enough. But Donovan had a lot of hard times, didn't he, of being compared unfavourably to Dylan, and Dylan had that horrible comment about him. I think I said that in the 66 one, to be honest with you. 25 is The Hollies, highly underrated. A nice album from The Hollies, Evolution, this year. Okay, we're halfway through. Hope you're doing all right on it so far. Let's have a look at these album covers. This is, of course, Love's Forever Changes, an album that is absolutely adored in many circles and could well be an outsider to win this week's 3 albums from 67, you know. 42 is the second album of the year from The Doors, Strange Days. Not critically liked as much, but I like it. 28 is Smiley Smile from the Beach Boys. Of course, the replacement for the album Smile. It was, I think it was meant to be a kind of a taster for it, but Smile never really emerged until years and years later when it was kind of redone by Brian Wilson. Here's a good thing about Smiley Smile, which was a huge disappointment to the Beach Boys fan at the time. Apparently, it has been found to have positive effects for people on LSD come downs, and is used by at least one drug clinic to relieve people from experiences of bad trips. Now you want to go and listen to it. This, of course, is the one with the song Vegetables on it, which supposedly has Paul McCartney playing celery, I think it is on it. He's credited as. 29, of course, despite saying Andy Warhol on the cover, is the Velvet Underground and Nico. And their famous debut album. What a wonderful album that is too. 30, it is Hendrix. Which one of the year is it? It is Axis, Bold as Love. It's not Are You Experienced, which is a much plainer cover. Well, in one version of it anyway. Okay, moving on to our riffs. I thought they were all right this week. I thought they went okay. It started with Hey Joe. There's Are You Experienced? From Jimi Hendrix. 32, Brown Eyed Girl, Van Morrison's biggest hits, and one, of course, that earns him virtually no money at all due to some court issues in getting out of his contract at the time. Here's something I didn't know. Maybe I'm the only one who didn't, but Brown Eyed Girl was originally called Brown Skinned Girl. No, I didn't know that at all, and was about an interracial relationship, and they decided that wouldn't go down well. They weren't going to do it. 33 years, Let's Spend the Night Together. It's not from their Satanic Majesty's Request, but there's their Satanic Majesty's Request. We looked at Between the Buttons before. You Only Live Twice, the Bond theme from Nancy Sinatra, of course, later bastardized by Robbie Williams for Millennium. And 35, hope you got that from just the repeated notes, was Hi Ho Silver Lining. Previous year, it wasn't a 67 album. Next year wasn't a 67 album, Truth. It came out in 68, his debut there. But as many say, Jeff Beck, thought of as one of the great guitarists of all time, best known by many people for a song which doesn't have a particularly strong guitar part to it. Has a bit of a guitar break, doesn't it, in it? But there we go. Number 36, let's move on with the covers here. Silence is Golden, another Tremolos one from this album, was The Four Seasons. Yeah, it was a B-side to their single Rag Doll, apparently from a couple of years earlier. I'm a Believer, I'm sure many of you would have known as a Neil Diamond song. Of course, Neil Diamond at the time, hadn't really had any hits at all. And so this made him a huge amount of money, which he wasn't making from his own albums at the time. Aretha took a respect, of course, from Otis Redding. He comes up a lot this year, doesn't he? Bam Bam My Baby Shut Me Down, I'm sure a lot of you knew, was Cher originally performed that, although many of us would prefer Nancy Sinatra's version here. Somebody to Love was by The Great Society. Now, The Great Society may well have been seen as kind of forerunners in some ways at Jefferson Airplane, or certainly to this version of it. It was written by Grace Slick's husband for what was her previous band. So she sang it for The Great Society, but then took it and redid it for Jefferson Airplane. So there we go. It was a cover, but a cover performed by the same person. Okay, these songs. Hope you did all right with this. The Neil Diamond song Dance To by Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction. Notice only by Uma Thurman. She only danced for a very brief time to it, didn't she? This is, of course, Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon, which in the track was performed by Urge, in the film was performed by Urge Overkill. Here's a great fact for you. Do you know who else recorded Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon? Cliff Richard. I'm tempted to listen to that, honestly. The world's most famous Morat was, of course, Tiffany, who covered I Think We're Alone Now, the original being from this year. Apparently, the original was reviewed by Lester Bangs, famous rock writer, as the bubblegum apotheosis. There we are. Johnny Rivers had a hit with Tracks of My Tears, which of course Smokey and the Miracles then took stratospheric, and we all remember it for that afterwards. But it was Johnny Rivers who had the first hit with it afterwards. Now, the original had a #1 hit in the UK in '88, and then had this with the same song this time. It was Something's Gotten Hold of My Heart. Of course, the Gene Pitney song. This was his last UK hit until the #1 in '88. So 21 years gap and the same song. Quite impressive. Pitney, of course, was much more popular in Britain than he was in America. A lot of it was, he was linked very much to the Stones. He used to hang around with the Stones quite a bit, partly because he was picked up by Andrew Oldham. And he was actually, here's a fact for you that you can throw at people. He was the first person to have a hit with a Stones original called That Girl Belongs to Yesterday. The Stones at that point had never released any of their own songs. Gene Pitney came in, was given one by Andrew Oldham, and had a hit with it because they were a bit nervous about their own. So there you go. And 45, that was the Bee Gees' To Love Somebody. Didn't go anywhere as a Bee Gees song. Nina Simone and Jimmy Somerville, amongst many others, did take it somewhere. Right, we're on the final, the final run in here. William Rees-Mogg incredibly intervened. You wouldn't believe it, would you? Especially considering the record of his family afterwards, on the drug conviction of Mick Jagger. And this, of course, was the 67 was a year of all the big drug convictions starting over the next however many months after this. This was the event down in I think it was Keith's house down in Sussex somewhere. The story was George Harrison was on their way there, but apparently kind of observed the police arriving and then backed off and ran away. But this year, the famous event where they turned up there and found Marianne Faithfull wearing very little indeed, just a great big fur coat and nothing else, and made a big deal of the conviction of it. And many people felt that it was, of course, there was a famous story, which I won't repeat because it's misogynistic, really, and didn't happen, including Marianne Faithfull. But a lot of people felt that this was a really, really nasty attempt to get at the Stones and cause them a problem here. They were looking at imprisoning Jagger, and apparently Jagger was very, very upset by this. If you read the account in Keith Richards' autobiography of it. Rees-Mogg intervened in a lead in the Times, and everything went well from there. Of course, this was Magical Mystery Tour that was shown for the first time on Boxing Day, and Paul McCartney still to this day claims it would have been far better if they'd shown it in colour. Well, it would have been far better if they'd shown it in colour, but I think the real thing was it was a BBC Two thing, I think. Even if on Boxing Day, I don't think it was really as big a deal there. I love Magical Mystery Tour. I think it's great. First time I saw it, I didn't. But, as a Beatles nut, I love it. I think it's great. 48. What was heard for the first time on 30th September? It was Radio 1. Radio 1, of course, started famously with the Moves, Flowers in the Rain, played by Tony Blackburn. That was the first start for it. Who wrote the lyrics to Georgie Girl? It was Jim Dale. And no, there weren't any double entendres in there along the Carry On line. And what about number 50? What about this song about the party at the Speakeasy nightclub in London held by the Beatles, with the title From Till Death Us Do Part that doesn't appear in the song, that had to be changed in the UK because it was taboo, somewhat taboo at the time. starting with a timpani solo and having a chorus of repeated abuse screamed at a long-haired youth. It is one of the Monkees' greatest songs of all time, Randy Scouse Git, or known as it was in Britain as Alternate Title. Still reached number 2. Number 2. I really hope you've enjoyed that. New video in 2 weeks' time, but please do donate to my Just Giving page. And please do follow me on Twitter. Please do give me any feedback. It's been lovely having you along as always. Spread the word, get it out there. Let's get some money raised. Let's get Young Minds UK earning a lot of money and helping a lot of people. See you again.